There are a lot of retro-inspired indie games. Some may even say the market is oversaturated with them. Most of the good ones base their gameplay on the classics from the era they're trying to emulate. For example, Undertale based its quirky humor and simple mechanics on Earthbound. Freedom Planet is based on classic Sonic and games from the company Treasure. And Shovel Knight is a combination of DuckTales, Mega Man, Mario 3, and, well, every other NES game.
Sometimes the inspiration is a bit more obvious than other times, to the point of some people calling it a clone. But is that really a bad thing? Let's talk about a game called Axiom Verge.
Developed solely by Tom Happ for 5 years, Axiom Verge is an exploration-based adventure game set on an alien planet. Do those words ring a bell to you? It's Metroid, and that's clear not just from the description. The locations you travel through are desolate and abandoned, except for the numerous enemies that obstruct your path. And the aesthetics range from gross and organic, to cold and mechanical, to overgrown and serene. On your journey you come across various weapons, upgrades, and tools that allow further access into the game's sprawling caverns. And the game never outright tells you where to go, you have to find that out for yourself. There are even ways to sequence break in this game. That is, skipping over parts of the game that are considered required, with clever and skillful use of the game mechanics. But let's stop talking about how similar this game is to Metroid. What's the actual game about? The story starts in a lab in New Mexico, where a scientist named Trace is conducting research on something. Everything seems alright until a lab explosion knocks Trace unconscious. Trace wakes up in an egg thing and immediately hears a voice telling him there's a gun in the next room. The voice doesn't stay for long, however, and so Trace is left alone. We later find out that the voice belongs to Alcinova, a giant computer-like being with the face of a woman. She's been severely weakened, and it's up to you and find and activate the power filter and the repair drones to restore her to a more functional state.
The things that happen after this are spoilers, and for the rest of the video I won't be talking about the story. But I do think the story is very interesting, and I'll probably be making another video that delves into the story sometime later. Go give that a watch if you're interested, and if it's out.
One more thing about the story is that a lot of what happened before the actual game isn't told to you outright. You need to find lore fragments and piece them together yourself. Like Metroid Prime. So even in that aspect, the game is like Metroid. But how is it different? Well, at face value, there doesn't seem to be much different from Metroid. The difference is in the details. Metroid is one of Nintendo's darker franchises, but Axiom Verge seems to have an even darker aesthetic. There's much more emphasis on the H.R. Giger style. And when areas get fleshy and organic, they really get fleshy and organic. So much that you can almost feel the gross, moist squelch. I like that word. The mechanics are also a bit different. Instead of bombing every wall that seems remotely suspicious, you use a big old laser drill. Instead of crawling or turning into a ball, you fire a small remote drone and explore ahead with that. There are sometimes thin walls that likely have something behind them. Instead of destroying the wall, you glitch across it. Glitches are also a big theme in Axiom Verge. Throughout the game, you'll encounter all sorts of things related to glitches. Certain walls seem corrupted, and sometimes there's just a big mess of glitchiness that blocks your path. Axiom Verge gives you the Address Disruptor, a tool that can corrupt and uncorrupt certain things in the game. Corrupting and uncorrupting something changes its behavior. If a wall seems to be glitching out, fire the Address Disruptor and it might become passable. If a part of the background seems missing, disrupt it and it might turn into a solid block for you to stand on. You can even corrupt enemies, and this is in my opinion one of the best parts of the game. Corrupting enemies usually severely cripples them, making them easier to kill. Sometimes corrupted enemies can perform new functions like destroy blocks and damage other enemies. Every time I encounter a new enemy, I corrupt it first to see what happens. Here's a useful tip. Stationary enemies that spawn smaller objects will usually heal you when corrupted. Use this when you're hurt and far away from a save point, which also heal you. Speaking of saves, Axiom Verge handles respawning a bit different. Instead of getting sent back in time to where you last saved, Trace actually dies, but his body is reborn in the last save point, with his consciousness and memories intact. This means that all the items you got before you died will still be there. Sometimes it's even more convenient to just kill yourself instead of backtracking. Please don't take that out of context.
On the subject of backtracking, there are sadly no such thing as warp points in this game, but the world of Axiom Verge is structured so that each area, save for those end game areas, circle a long horizontal shaft known as Indy. There's a giant moving head here that will take you to each area like a train. Yeah, warp points probably would have been better, what with each area being centered around its warp point, but this is still pretty neat, and I really like how this makes for a pretty realistic infrastructure. Although now that I think about it, it would have probably been logical to use save points as teleporters. If your mind machines can travel from your limp dead body to your last save point, it should probably be possible to travel from egg to egg. Maybe we'll have that in Axiom Verge too. The soundtrack, which I had no segue for, is also really good. Where Metroid has mostly orchestral tracks, the music in Axiom Verge is all synthwave and chiptunes, with the occasional Indian singing, which Tom sampled from a CD he bought in India for $30. I'm not kidding, that really happened. The music is perfect for this game. It really helps deliver the feel of each area, my favorite track being Cellular Skies. Another thing I really like about Axiom Verge are its weapons. There are over 20 different kinds of weapons you can find in the game, all with unique functions. You got your basic blaster, short range but powerful, a flamethrower and bombs, but also wall clingers, spread shots, shards, and boomerangs. Compared to Metroid's straight shooting beams and straight shooting missiles, this offers a lot more customizability. It's fun to get as many weapons as you can to experiment on different enemies. The bosses don't have any specific weaknesses to any of them, but sometimes a weapon has just the right range to hit their weak spot. Here's another useful tip. The Ion Beam and the Distortion Field function almost the same as the Axiom Disruptor and the Kilver respectively, only continuous. It's a good idea to swap them out once you get them if you don't feel like mashing. So, with all that said, Axiom Verge is still very similar to Metroid, and yeah, it's fair to be considered a clone. Aside from that, it has a few problems, like backtracking and weird difficulty spikes, which I forgot to mention. But the rest of the game is really good. It looks and sounds cool, glitching is fun, the story is interesting, and there's a huge variety in weapons. There are even parts of this game that are, in my opinion, done much better than in the source material. In fact, I think this game is better than most Metroid games. And one more thing,
The last time we had a 2D Metroid game was 2004.
the same goes for games like classic Castlevania and, to a lesser extent, Sonic. A much lesser extent because Sega's publishing Sonic Mania, which looks pretty good. A game like Odallus the Dark Call is one of the closest things we had to a classic Castlevania since the Adventure Rebirth. And Freedom Planet filled the void pretty well for Sonic after what happened the year before it's released. But Sonic Mania though!
What I'm saying is, games that are similar can be very good, especially in times where some companies, not naming any names, except Nintendo and Konami, just don't make any games for their old IPs.
Alright, before you guys start calling names like Keiji, It's Better Than Nothing, Inafune... Oh wait, he didn't actually say that. Sorry. But anyway, hear me out. Axiom Verge is a good, functional game. A game can be similar. Not too similar, of course, because then you might be paying for something you've already mostly experienced. But say you like Game A. Along comes Game B, which is like Game A, but just different enough, and also really good. Is there really a reason not to try Game B?
Anyway, I recommended you play Axiom Verge, and if there was ever a game that you missed out on because you thought it looked too similar, maybe go back, see what people have to say about it, look at the price tag. Speaking of which, maybe get this game on sale. Axiom Verge is good, but not €17.99 good. But if you really like Metroid, this is probably a game for you.